Welcome back. Today I'm making a dish that's very close to my heart. It's a Portuguese dish and it's Portuguese pork and clams. It's a very nice recipe. It's a little bit more work than the other recipes. If you make this, it's going to be very delicious and you're going to love this, but you've got to just stick to the recipe. So what we've got is, we've got the pork. What we did with the pork is we marinated the pork yesterday. As you'll see in the video, we marinated the pork last night, overnight, and through most of today. We've then taken the pork out, as you'll see, as I'll explain to you. We've taken the pork out, we've put a little bit of flour and seasoning in the pork. The pork is now ready to be pan fried. The rest of the ingredients, we've basically got a stock. You can have a chicken stock or you can have a pork stock, whatever stock you've got available. Chicken will work as well. Some finely chopped onions. I've got 2 garlic cloves chopped up. I've got 2 chilies chopped up. I've got a little bit of chili, dried chili. This stuff is vicious, so I've got a little bit of that. As you can see, it's a very small spoon, and I've got a heaped teaspoon of paprika. I've got 1 cup of fresh coriander chopped up. I've got a tin of tomatoes, and I've got some salt and pepper to taste. And then of course there's the clams that forms a big part of this dish. I buy this at ShopRite Checkers. It's white clams. They come pre-cooked in this sachet. You do this in the microwave, and I like to use these and put the juice in that they come into my dish. You can use fresh clams, you can use whatever you can find, other clams. I prefer this one. This one works very nice with this dish, and they always have it in stock. So to marinate the pork for the pork and clam stew dish, you've got to start the day before. So this is what we do. I prefer to use pork neck. You can use pork shoulder or pork neck, about a kilo, 1.2 kilos. I cut it up nicely into bite-sized pieces like that. So we trim the meat, trim all excess fat off, we cut it into bite-sized pieces. We then take about 4 or 5 cloves of garlic, and you just roughly crush them, because you're going to remove these after you've marinated the meat. And then 4 or 5 bay leaves. I've got 4 nice bay leaves here. You then add 3 tablespoons of red pepper sauce. Now red pepper sauce equates into Tabasco sauce. I've used all of my Tabasco sauce at the moment, but that equates into 3 tablespoons of Tabasco sauce, which we've got there. You also need 1 cup of crisp white wine. Now I always cook, and I like this Robertson's white wine. It's a very crisp, dry white wine. It's very nice in pasta dishes, very nice to cook with, and I always use this. So to have one of these in the wine fridge, or in your fridge or in your wine cellar at all times, is a very good thing, because it works very well with cooking. We then use my 2 favorite ingredients, which is Himalayan salt and white pepper, just to spice it a little bit, and marinate this overnight, and then tomorrow we can put it all together. So I'll show you what we do. So first of all, we're going to take our red pepper sauce and add it into our bowl. We're then going to add 1 cup of crisp white wine. After lockdown, this smells so good. So we've got 1 cup of crisp white wine. We now add our bay leaves and our garlic. Then add the pork, and I'm going to massage the pork a little bit in here so that it gets nice and evenly spiced with the sauce and everything. So I'm going to just work it in here a little bit, and then going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. I would say about half a teaspoon of salt, like that, and you could probably add another half a teaspoon of white pepper to your marinade. Half a teaspoon of white pepper. You could then stir that in and let this just rest overnight in the fridge. The longer it rests, the more it's going to get flavor from all these ingredients. So I would leave this to rest overnight, and then we'll show you tomorrow when we carry on and we cook this in a fantastic Portuguese pork and clam stew. So I remove the pork from the marinade after it's been in there since last night. So I remove that, and I dry it off a little bit. So you can basically take it out, squeeze a little bit of the marinade back in the dish, and then just dry the pork slightly. I then take a fairly large plastic packet. I put a little bit of cake flour in there with some pepper and salt, probably about a quarter teaspoon of pepper and a quarter teaspoon of salt. I'm going to mix that up, and then I'm going to chuck the pork in there just to give it a little coating. So when I fry it in the pan, it's going to give it a nice little crispiness, and it'll also help thicken up the stew at the end. So that's a very simple little tip. So for the potatoes, what we're going to do is we're going to take a medium-sized potato, obviously peel it, whatever. I've used 3 medium, this is the third one, there's 2 there. For the size dish I'm making, I think that's adequate. So I've taken 3 medium-sized potatoes. I then proceed to cut them up into bite-sized pieces like this. I'm then going to dry them, coat them in a little bit of oil, salt them, and then roast them in the hot oven at 200 degrees. Basically with the potato we've got 2 options, and the one option is to deep fry it in some oil on the stove top, and the second option is to roast it in the oven. So I've taken the potatoes, I'm going to go for the roasting option. I've taken the potatoes, I've covered them in a little bit of olive oil. I'm going to give them a nice sprinkling of salt. Basically just give them a nice little coating there, some coarse sea salt like that. And I'm now going to take them and slap them in the oven at 200 degrees and let them roast. So now these are the ingredients that we need. The potatoes are roasting in the oven as we speak. So basically what we're going to do now is we're going to pan fry the meat, remove the meat from the oil. We're going to then fry up everything else and then add the stock and the marinade to give it flavor and cook the whole dish, and I'll show you exactly how to do all that. So we fry up the pork to give it a little bit of crispness in the hot oil, hot olive oil. I put about a half a cup of oil in here, and then we just fry it up. Fry the porky up and take it out of the oil, and then it's still going to cook in the sauce and the marinade in the stock after this. So this is just a quick little crispness, just to give it a nice little, like that's perfect, nice little edge on there. And that's what you need to do with all of it. I wouldn't overfill the pan. I would do it in probably 2 or 3 batches depending on how big your serving is, but not too many at a time so that it gets a chance to crisp up nicely. Okay, we fried up the pork in the oil. We're now going to be adding the onions to the same oil. We're going to fry that up a little bit, and then we're going to add the garlic and the chili and the paprika, and I'll show you as we go along. So we've got the oil, back to hot oil that we fried the pork in. We've added the onions, we're going to sweat those off, and then we'll add the rest of the ingredients. Okay, so we've sweated off the onions quite nicely. I'm now going to add the garlic, 2 cloves chopped up nicely. We add the garlic, we're going to fry that in with the onion. The next thing I'm going to be adding is the little bit of chili powder and the paprika, and after that I'll add the tin of tomatoes. So I'll show you when we do that. Great, so we've sauteed the garlic and the onions nicely. We've added the paprika and the powdered chili. I've added a little bit of salt and pepper for taste. You can put a little pinch of sugar in if you wish. I sometimes just do that to give the onion a little bit of sweetness. That's entirely up to you. I now add the tin of tomatoes to the dish to give it a little bit of juiciness. Fantastic, pick up all the flavors. I'm also going to add the little tin of chopped chilies at the same time. There we go. I'm going to bring that up to temperature. Right, so once we've fried up the tomatoes and the chilies and the garlic like that, I'm going to add the meat back into the dish. Fantastic. This is going to be a very, very good dish. Then proceed to add the drained marinade from last night. You can leave the bay leaves in there. It's got the wine in. I've taken the chunky pieces of garlic out, so I add that marinade. It's got all the flavors in it straight back into the dish. I'm then going to add to that a little bit of the stock, just to give it a little bit of flavor. Probably about a third of a cup of stock initially, and let this just all come up to temperature and start cooking slowly and gently like that. We've added all the stock, and you can see from the thickening of the sauce, this is just from flouring the meat before we fry it in the oil. So that little bit of flour that was on the meat is causing this nice thick sauce. So we've got everything in here. I've added all the stock, so you've got to boil this for about 30-35 minutes in the juice to make sure that the pork is cooked very nicely and all the flavors marry, and it's starting to look very, very good before we add the clams. So you follow the instructions on the packet. You steam them from frozen for 4 minutes in the microwave. You cut a little hole in the one corner. You then take, they all open, as you can see, they're awesome. And with that juice, that's amazing. So we chuck them all into the stew like that with the clam juice, and then all the clams perfectly like that. So once we added the clams, we've reduced this. We've let the clam juice cook with all the other ingredients. You can see everything is nice and thick. The juice is nice and thick and very tasty. So we're now going to put the dish together. There you have it. My version of Portuguese pork and clam stew with a nice crispy bread, fresh butter. It's a slow eating dish with a lacquer bottle of white wine on a Sunday afternoon, and you dip up the sauce and you enjoy it, and it's absolutely fantastic.